Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Black Tower Show. I am your host, Nathan Ford. I'm joined by Jake Fox. We're in BC Studios, upstate New York. We're broadcasting 1310 WRSB, 1590 WASB. Brockport, Canandaigua, Rochester. The sun is shining. It's 88 degrees. But we got work to do inside. Mr. Walter Jones, Congressman Walter Jones. We've had him on the show a couple times. Always a pleasure to talk to him. We support him. We like what he's doing. We love the work that he's doing. U.S. Representative for North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District, serving since 1995. He's a member of the Republican Party, and he's doing good work. He's in there. He's fighting. He's fighting for your rights. Walter Jones, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Well, listen, thank you, Nathan and Jake, and I appreciate the introduction. And as you well know, I'm a great admirer of my dear friend Ron Paul, so I follow him on these libertarian issues of protecting the civil rights of the civil liberties of the American people.
July 24th, 2013, House Vote 412. You voted in favor of essentially defunding this program, the NSA's
Absolutely.
program of data collection. Go into that. What does this mean for the American public?
Well, I think, this was an effort by Justin Amash and John Conyers, a Republican and Democrat. And their legislation, I think, after the Snowden made public his concerns about the NSA overreach and things that they were doing that were, quite frankly, I don't think they had the authority to do to begin with. And we lost that vote only about 5 votes, and I was very disappointed that the Republican leadership in the House did not encourage Republicans to come out 100% to defund the NSA, and but it was a close vote. It made a statement that sometimes is the way that you start the movement, and I hope the American people will continue to follow the NSA, and again, I think they are exceeding the authority that was given to them. Of course, I did not vote for any of the Patriot Act reauthorizations. I think, again, we got a problem in this country. And we can go in that in a moment if you'd like. But this was a heated debate, and if the leadership of the Republican Party had been in favor of the Amash-Conyers amendment, then it would have passed, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would like to get into it. Talk about the overreach that is happening. Talk about the spying and what that means and what Americans should feel. Because I think Americans are confused about how they should think, how they should feel about that overreach, about the spying, about the data collecting. What is really going on here?
Well, this seemed to come to a head after 9/11, which was a tragedy in our country, and we were all, felt like we had all been injured or hurt, and maybe some had lost loved ones and that type of situation. But I think the Bush administration saw an opportunity to grow and expand the inner workings of the NSA and other agencies so that they could take certain steps that really, in my opinion, are a violation of the civil liberties of the American people. And yet, I want to be fair about it. I really think that at that point, the previous administration felt that they could just about convince the American people, trust me, and I'm going to take care of you. Well, as Judge Andrew Napolitano has said in his book, A Nation of Sheep, all you have to do is say to a government, if you'll protect me, I'll give up my civil liberties, and that's what I think is happening in America today. I really do.
We're talking to Congressman Walter Jones, representing the 3rd District of North Carolina. Go to jones.house.gov.
The government, especially the executive branch, isn't being very truthful about what's happening within the NSA either. I mean, Obama just made that famous speech where he said, there is no domestic spying program, but yet I read the Wall Street Journal today, and they have an article saying the NSA monitored content of all email and text communications in Salt Lake City, Utah, and has a capacity to monitor 75% of all of Americans' email and text communications. So, I mean, they have this huge capacity to do these things. They've been found over and over again by whistleblowers to be, doing these things, taking part in in all of these illegal and unconstitutional actions. I mean, what is happening here? Why is there a Why would Obama come out and say that when clearly the NSA and others like Hayden are saying this is actually going on and you're better for it?
Nathan and Jake, I don't know whether the American people, we are obviously in a very difficult economy for many, many Americans. I don't know what has happened. It doesn't seem that the outrage, and I come back to the time of the Vietnam War, probably both you gentlemen weren't even born then. If you were, you were babies. But I don't know if this is the dumbing down of America with all this technology. I mean, you got 5-year-old kids having iPhones, and all of a sudden it just seems like that the fight, so to speak, that would have taken place after whether Snowden should or should not have done what he did, that's beside the point. He did it. Let's just face it. But it did awaken a lot of the American people to the information that he made public. And yet, for a short period of time, there seemed to be an outrage at the government. Of course, some were outraged at Snowden, but again, what he did was to educate the American people to the expansive overreach by the federal government. And I don't know where the outrage is anymore. I look at the Afghan war, it keeps going on, and a few kids get killed every now and then, but this thing with the civil liberties they should be burning the phones up in Washington, D.C. of members of Congress in both the House and Senate and say, for goodness sakes, what in the world are y'all doing by allowing this expansion and this overreach by the administration and the NSA?
We're talking to Congressman Walter Jones. Go to jones.house.gov. We don't have too much time, so I want to get into some of the other issues that are going on, some of the issues that you're backing.
Sure.
You voted to remove IRS authority to enforce Obamacare. Let's get into that.
Well, for me personally, I think that the federal government has no business being involved of taking over the health care of the American people. Now, maybe there are certain aspects of the health system that needed legislation to make it more affordable or accessible, things like that. I could understand that. But not a federal government taking over the health care system, because the federal government, I don't know anything, I'm getting to be, I guess, an older man, I don't know anything the federal government does very well. It just seems like all the federal government knows to do is to borrow more money and spend more money, but the results are very, very disappointing. And I don't think the Affordable Care Act or the Obamacare, however one would like to say it, is their privilege. But all in all, right now, the majority of companies that I have visited since I've been home for the August break, I mean, they're telling me that they don't know exactly how this thing's going to be implemented, and they don't know how it's going to impact their company or their employees.
Sure.
I'm in North Carolina, where the state of North Carolina, I'm the Republican governor, and I am a Republican. He's made the statement that we're not going to participate.
Yes.
It is truthfully right now in a chaotic situation. Nobody really knows what we're going to be doing the next couple of months as it relates to this national health care.
Yeah, I'd also like to cram in, get your take on the TPP,
Sure.
the Trans-Pacific Partnership, if you could comment on that.
Say that again.
The TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
I'm opposed to that, and I would tell you that I'm working in a bipartisan way on the bill that might be introduced by the Republican Party to give fast-track authority to the President of the United States. And any of these agreements, all I see, quite frankly, is that we continue to sell out the American people, because whoever we are trying to reach an agreement with or a treaty with, they seem to get more for their buck than we do.
I would like to explain to the audience exactly what the TPP is capable of. And by the way, the executive branch isn't consulting Congress at all, as far as I know, on this bill, which is the worst. This is the worst piece of legislation I've ever heard of, possibly. It's really horrible. it gives multinational corporations the right to demand taxpayer compensation for policies that corporations deem a barrier to their profits. If you want, whatever you want to say, that's fascism.
Well, you're right, and it is the total sellout of the American sovereignty of this great nation. Will tell you that ever since I have been in Congress, and Ron Paul has certainly taken a position on these two issues that we're talking about, and any time that we're going to kowtow to another country and their laws, and they can influence our laws and our positions, that's something wrong with this. Tell me, do we have freedom anymore? Do we have sovereignty anymore? Do we have civil liberties anymore? That's why I wanted to be on your show, and thank you again for allowing me to be on this show. You got to keep preaching what you're preaching, because this country is really on shaky ground.
It is a scary prospect. I mean, the way that a lot of these things are sold is in the name of safety. And I fear that the generation now, young people now, they are kind of ruled by being comfortable and being safe. And I don't know how a population of people get that fire back or get that desire to fight for their liberties. I don't know if that's something that can be cultivated within a person. But I hope, and I think information and spreading the word is part of that.
Well, Jake and Nathan, you're doing God's work, and by trying to awaken the people to the facts that you cannot always believe what you're getting back home from your member of Congress. Most of them are very good people, don't get me wrong, but when I look at how in the world, in just the last 2 or 3 years, this country's gone more and more, to use your term, to socialism, from the healthcare system we have to having a federal government that wants to listen to your telephone calls, that wants to listen to track your emails. That in itself should shake the foundation of America.
Right. We're talking to Congressman Walter Jones, representing the 3rd District of North Carolina. Go to jones.house.gov.
Finally, I'd like to get your take on this growing trend where journalists are increasingly having to defend themselves, saying journalism is not terrorism. I don't know. I'd like your take on that.
Well, I think it goes back really to the Iraq War, that the journalists of that time, which now most of them have aged out, so to speak, they know that they bought the lie by the Bush administration to justify a war that was unnecessary. And I think what is happening now, that there are younger reporters or those who are in that world of the media that are trying to educate and to awaken the populace before it's too late. I'll go back one more time to the Iraq War. Where were the journalists then? I'm talking about liberals as well as conservatives. Why didn't they look into whether Dick Cheney was telling the truth about the weapons that Saddam had that could be used against the American people? It didn't really seem to matter. It was kind of like Lyndon Johnson lied about the Vietnam War. It just seems like we don't hold our administrations to the truth. I mean, that's why we have impeachment. We ought to be able to impeach a president who we don't trust to be telling the American people the truth, but it never happens. We impeach Bill Clinton because he might have had a sexual relationship with a woman. But how about, is it more important to have impeachment when a president sends 4,000 young boys and girls to die? I don't know.
Yeah. Wise words from Congressman Walter Jones, representing the 3rd District of North Carolina. Go to jones.house.gov. Also, on my final note is,
sure.
As I was doing some research, I found you were voted the nicest person in Congress too. So I just have to mention that.
Well,
but you got the fire. See,
I do have the fire, and It's nice to be liked because maybe when you're liked, people will trust you. And I try to tell the truth the way I see it, and we might agree, we might not agree, but it's the way I see it, and I'm getting frustrated because I see my country collapsing.
Congressman Walter Jones, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us, and you have a great day.
God bless you both, and please God bless our country and our men and women in uniform. Thank you both so much. Bye-bye.